Great. Thanks, Alex. Appreciate that. So as Alex said, my name is Brian Jambor. I've been in and around partnerships for the better part of a decade. A couple of different, very fast growing SaaS companies. So Infusionsoft relatively recently renamed themselves as Keep. I was one of 3 core people that started their partner program. The company, when I was there, grew from 17 million to over 100 million in ARR, and partnerships grew from about 6% contribution to over 30 while I was there for about a 5-year period of time. And then I went over to a local search company called Yodel, started their program from the ground up. So came into nothing and built it from the ground up. And that company got acquired for about 320 million by web.com. And then most recently at Sendoso, built partner programs from the ground up. So started with maybe 3 or 4 handshake, word of mouth, if you can call them partnerships, right? Nothing formal there, and built that from the ground up with over 200 partners now. So appreciate the introduction, Alex. We're going to talk a little about channel or referral. What program does your product support? Which is maybe a different way of looking at it than people have in the past. So with that, Alex, if you want to record.
Yeah, I've been recording, so I got the introduction recorded. You're all good, man. Thanks for being here. And if anyone's gotten the first email in our newsletter onboarding, whatever that first drip sequence is, it starts off with it's a partnership, not a vendorship. And that's something that Brian taught me very early on when I first met him a couple of years ago. And it's part of the culture that we push out. So Brian's to thank for that. So
thanks, Alex. I appreciate that. Yeah, we believe in. I coined that phrase at web.com. We were when we got acquired by Yodel. The phrase essentially was, we believe in strategic partnerships, not strategic vendorships, and the difference is in reciprocity. And so really trying to rally the organization around what a partner is and reciprocity. But we'll talk about that here in a minute. So channel versus reseller. So before I get too far into this, I want to make sure that maybe I replace a little bit of nomenclature. Channel sometimes is a dirty word amongst partnership people, maybe newer partnership people. Those that have been in the industry for a long time say, yeah, it's a channel. It's just another thing, another way that business gets done. But we're going to replace that word with reseller. Just so everybody's on the same page. Reseller can have a lot of different connotations, but at its can channel. But just to be clear, we're going to use the word reseller in the presentation. Also want to make sure that I didn't offend Alex by the use of channel. So we'll make a strategic pivot there. So what are you really going to get out of this? This is going to be less of a presentation and more of a discussion. So my hope is that, those of you that have questions, you open up your mic, you put some thoughts in the chat box. If you see something that's on a slide, you say, Brian, I completely disagree with that point of view. I think you're wrong, and here's why. I'm okay with that. I'm completely open for healthy dialogue and debate, and I hope that that's what this really drives. So a couple of things here in terms of foundational thoughts. Not all products are capable of supporting a successful reseller program. And I'll define successful as a reseller program that is a minimum of 30% of a company's annual recurring revenue. That's a very successful program. Okay. Not all products are capable of that, supporting that type of a program. And I'll explain why, some pitfalls that you can avoid, and then how a referral program sometimes can actually transition into a reseller program. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about the lift required, referral versus resell, what's in it for agencies. We'll focus on agency model in terms of the resell profile, and then how products typically evolve and why you can oftentimes find, not in years 1, 2, or 3, a product being able to support a reseller program, but more in years 4, 5, and 6, as there's additional complexity added to products typically in SaaS. Okay, so most partnership people typically have an organization that says, oh, we should start a partner program because partners can generate this massive, big revenue cash cow into the organization. It can offset top of funnel inbound or outbound activity. We can acquire customers at a lower cost, right? So a lot of times it's revenue based in terms of why companies want to start a partner program. And so they typically find some account executive that's interested, or a SDR or BDR that's interested, and say, hey, we have 2 or 3 relationships that are generating some revenue. Can you just go find out what we can do to get them to generate more revenue, right? And it's typically not very strategic when it starts. But the problem is oftentimes you have salespeople usually that start in partnerships by sales-driven orgs that just look at the revenue from partnerships as this golden goose egg, so to speak, that can be laid and then taken. And the only way salespeople know how to do business is typically through financial incentives, right? And so they create some sort of partner program where they have a couple of agencies and they say, hey, we'll give you extra revenue share, we'll give you extra money if you send us more referrals or close more business. And that's it. It's a very transactional relationship. I call it a vendorship, right? Where really what you're doing is you're bringing in agencies as a outsourced contract sales team, so to speak, with little to no reciprocity. Most partner managers haven't operated an agency, and what most partner managers or partner people don't recognize is that agencies thrive off of retainers and service revenue. That's the goal of an agency. How can they get more service revenue out of clients? How can they set up retainers with those clients? And so what happens is you have this kind of disconnect where partner teams say, hey, I need more sales. I'll just provide partners with a bunch of collateral. I'll provide them with a higher rev share. Hey, if you sell more, you get maybe rather than 20% rev share, you get a 30% rev share or 40% rev share, or what is even unheard of is 50% rev share, which I will admit on this call only, that I actually piloted at one point in time many years ago a 50% rev share with an agency to see if they would quote unquote sell more, right? Horrible move, learn from my mistakes. The agencies aren't in it for rev share, they're in it for service revenue. And most partner teams don't have baked in a really good system for agencies to get them to join their program based on the carrot or benefit of generating more retainers with their clients, generating more service revenue. Okay, so that's typically the disconnect, right? So if you think about the two in terms of a reseller program versus a referral program. Okay, so a referral program has most of the components of a reseller program. It's just more limited in scope. And so a reseller program, your resellers, if you bring them on, they have to understand your ideal customer profile. They need access to marketing information, ideally that's co-branded. They need consistent marketing updates with the latest marketing campaigns. So these are kind of table stakes that probably many of you are already doing today. They need to be trained on your value prop. They need to know how your solution pairs with all of your competitors, right? And that's typically the referral partner kind of table stakes. Resellers, on the other hand, also need a demo environment, right? They need training on how to give a demo. They need consistent updates on new features that are rolled out. They need access to an FAQ document that's up to date on the latest, not only updates on your product, but in addition to that, updates on competitors' products, right? They have the ability to transact. So how are they going to be able to actually sell, right? Do they have contract templates that includes your terms of use? Do they have an online cart? What does that look like? And then they need to onboard those clients that they sell. So they need to know best practices on onboarding, appropriate software configuration, right? They need to be able to renew those clients on some sort of consistent cadence, whether it be monthly or annually or multi-year through multi-year contracts. In a perfect world, partners have the ability to expand the account by offering additional services or features or seats. And then they need to be able to, and this is really core, manage multiple clients in their book. So if you have an agency partner that has 10, 15, 20, 50, 100 different clients, and they're helping all those clients log in, do they have the, call it super user permissions to log into multiple accounts and then configure all those accounts and maintain all those accounts very easily, right? So it's kind of the reseller infrastructure, right, that you have to have and make that work. So I'm going to pause for a second, read a couple of quick comments here. So Alex has a really good comment in relation to the litmus test, right, with a reseller program. Can the product be fully owned or implemented by the agency. So he brings up Active Campaign, which is a great example. So you can read through that comment. Sunir has another great comment, right, in terms of simplifying it. When your plumber sent you, that's actually really good. I'm going to pause for a second. Sunir, do you want to articulate on that just a second? Again, I want to turn this into a discussion.
Yeah, this is my standard shtick now, because I actually remembered one of my clients yelled at me because he was actually building a bricks and mortar store. He was a fashion retailer, and I was doing his analytics on his e-commerce site. And he said, Sunir, my plumber is not making me buy my own pipes. Why are you making me sign up for all this stuff? He didn't understand anything that I was trying, like branch.io and talk to us, nothing. And it hit me, my plumber never sends me to a hardware store to buy my own pipes and gaskets and valves or flux or any of that stuff. And if you're basically a pipe, then your agency is your plumber, and they're just going to take you into the system. And the problem that a lot of us have is we think we are the vanity, the tile, something that the customer feels, but even Active Campaign isn't, because the customer's goal is actually more customers off the internet, and they're going to rely on the digital marketing agency to set it up. So even Active Campaign isn't necessarily something the customers care about. It's just a pipe in the system. So allow your agencies to be great plumbers, build systems around you, and they'll bring you in. Right? And this is what Alex says. Then they can 100% manage you, and they'll bring you into every single client because you're just part of their standard operating procedure.
Exactly. Spot on. I love that. It's such a great analogy. Absolutely great analogy. One of the other things that I think through when I think about, okay, should we stand up a reseller or referral program is how mature the organization is, right? So if you think about what's required to stand up a referral versus a reseller program inside of a SaaS company, right? We took all of the existing kind of bullet points and broke them out into different departments that would be responsible for setting that up, right? So if you look at the reseller side, yeah, the marketing team's going to have all the ICP information and all the collateral that they already use for top of funnel, right? And you can probably take some of that and give it to your partners, and you should align with the marketing team on that. And you as the partner team can train all of your partners on those things. But when you start getting to the reseller model, you suddenly need sales ops to figure out what that demo environment's going to be for partners. Do they each get a demo account? Is it pre-configured with data and content so that they can, display a demo as a great demo should be displayed? Is that content easily tailorable to the actual prospect like the sales team can do today? Or does it need to be customized, right? So all the things that your sales ops team or department or individual is doing for your sales team, they would now have to do for the reseller partners as well, right? In the reseller program. And then all the things that happen on the back end for the sales team in terms of transacting a transaction, right? They probably market close one in some sort of CRM, and that probably kicks off some emails to somebody to do some implementation, and maybe it provisions an account automatically, or maybe it kicks over to a systems engineering person to provision the account. Whatever that process is like, engineering has to replicate that for the reseller program, right? And then all of the onboarding best practices have to be completely in line with whatever customer experience is doing to make sure that the reseller team is leveraging those best practices. What you don't want to do is find yourself in a situation where you're very early in your product, you're very early in your sales cycle as an organization, and say, okay, I think we know how to sell this. We're getting some good market traction. Let's dump a bunch of partners in the program. And then inevitably the partners can't sell it as well as your internal team because they don't get trained as well as your internal team because they don't have the up-to-date latest information as your internal team. And they don't have all the tools and assets that marketing pumps out for the sales team, right? They don't have the dedicated systems engineers, things along those lines. And so what happens is partners flounder. And then your executive teams come to you and say, hey, we gave you the ability to go create a reseller program, and it was supposed to generate 15 to 20, 30% of revenues. And how come it isn't? Right. And the reason why is because the infrastructure isn't put in place from an organizational standpoint to actually support a reseller program. Or there aren't best practices already established within the organization that would then be able to be translated to partners, right? So more often than not, the right approach, in my opinion, when you're starting a partner program is a referral program. Even if the product supports a reseller program, even if there's services that you can wrap around the product, first get really good about honing in all of the marketing collateral and translating it to be externally used by partners. Same thing with, basic training on your ICP, battle cards, things along those lines. You're going to need those anyway for a reseller program. And so if you start with referrals in a referral program, you can kind of iterate on some of those things. The real question going back to services is, why would an agency want to make an investment into learning how to give a demo? I'm just kind of curious here. I wonder how many people on the call have started as salespeople in their kind of career path, or have experience as being a salesperson in their career path. There you go. Thanks, Robert. If anybody else has experience being a salesperson, kind of front of line sales, just type in me in the chat box, or type in yes in the chat box. Marco, thanks. Annie, thanks. I think many partnership people have, right? It's very common. Now go back and think, when you were a salesperson, how long did it take you to master giving a demo? Like that first demo, I don't know about you, but I spent time on Salesforce and SaaS. I was a GM, didn't own it, but I was GM of an agency for 5 years. Like those first demos for me were painful. And it took me, 10, 15, 20 calls, to actually get it really kind of, quasi dialed in. Your partners are going to have to go through that same cycle. Right. And so when a partner comes into your program, in a reseller program, they know going into it, they're going to have to invest a substantial amount of time in real dollars in order to either understand the demo themselves, if it's a smaller agency, if it's a larger agency, train their people on how to give a good demo. They're going to have to spend time training all their people on your value prop, training all their people on your competitive advantage and what your competitors do. I'll think about all the questions that your internal sales team is asked on a daily basis about your product. Now your partner has to learn every single one of those questions, rebuttals, and answers to that, right? In addition to, just as Sunir was mentioning earlier, like all the technology that your ecosystem utilizes just to process a transaction, they've got to learn how to do all of that. Why would an agency want to make that big of an investment in your company when there are a ton of SaaS companies out there? I mean, there's over 8,000 MarTech solutions out there. Most companies nowadays have some sort of partner program, whether that be reseller, referral, whatever. So why would an agency want to partner with you specifically? That's the problem that you got to solve, right? And the way you solve that, the way you get agencies extremely interested in partnering with you more than anybody else, is because you've created a service model around your offering or your product that they can wrap around and sell to existing clients, get retainers that validate or not validate, but compensate for the sizable investment that they're going to make into your program, right? So it goes back to, they make most of their money on service revenue. So you got to generate enough reciprocal service revenue value in order to make it worth the investment for an agency to resell your product. That's the key to a good reseller program. If your product isn't complex enough, doesn't have the infrastructure to create a really good service offering around the product, you really need to go with a referral program. So I'll give you a quick story. When I was at Yodel, we had a very specific vertical product. It was a practice management marketing solution for dentists. That's the only industry that it was good for. It literally hooked into a dentist practice management system, which is their version of a CRM. And it was like the Marketo to their CRM, if you will. So you do drip marketing campaigns, right? You send some stuff out. The problem was, it wasn't nearly as complex as Marketo. This was super simple software. You could do essentially scheduled email templates in it, and you could do some text-based marketing. Very simple, pre-configured with a ton of templates that were tried and proven specifically for the dental industry. Well, I came into Yodel and I said, oh, okay, let's look at kind of what this is. Yeah, okay, so it's kind of like Marketo. Maybe we could do a reseller program. So I came in and I spun up a reseller program. We built the shopping carts that partners could transact, product in. It had some tenancy in there. They can manage multiple customers at a time. And the problem that we had in getting traction, and we were adding a handful of partners a month, which really wasn't all that many. But the problem that we had getting traction is that partners couldn't see a clear way to wrap services around that product, because we already had all the templates inside the product that the customer would ever need in terms of text message templates and email templates, and the best way to set them up, and the training and onboarding was already built into the product. And so partners came in and they said, this gets set up in a day. All the content is already built into the app. How would we wrap services around it? There's literally nothing for us to do other than sell this thing, and then the customers onboarded in the product, and that's it. And we struggled. We should have pivoted. We should have went straight to a referral program, candidly. And we hit up a ton of dental specific agencies, and the vast majority of them were like, yeah, when I have a client, I'll send them over. But they weren't willing to dedicate the time and resources to actually make it a core part of their offering, because they can wrap service revenue around it. And so you start thinking about the product that you have in your organization. I've listed a couple of different ideas in terms of types of services that partners could potentially wrap around the product to make it viable, right? So if it's low configuration, right, with a product in terms of setup, maybe that's off the table. But maybe there's pre-configured content or components that are vertical specific, right? And maybe partners can charge for the sale of that content or component and then configure it in the app. Maybe there's vertical additions that partners can specifically sell. Great ways to test specific verticals, right? You talk about product-led growth, which is a really hot topic with product leaders nowadays. PLG strategies are great for that in terms of vertical additions sold by partners. API development, if you're doing that in-house, think about outsourcing it to partners and have partners wrap services around additional API development. Strategy and playbooks. Maybe there's training and coaching about best ways to use your product, and you can coach partners on, hey, it'd be great if we had this. The sales team is asking for this. If you create this, then we're willing to promote this to our customer base and send some customers your way where they can consume this strategy or playbook from you, right? And then customer onboarding for high-risk customers that fail to launch. Maybe you have customers that are really low NPS, high propensity to churn because they never adopted the product for whatever reason. Take some of those and give them to your partners. Let your partners take a swing at it. Low to no risk for your CX team, but provides additional reciprocal value. And then maybe partners can wrap that as a service back to your business in terms of increasing the retention from at-risk, high-risk customers. So a couple of different things. I realize this slide is fuzzy. I apologize for that. I'll just walk you through it real quick. So typically what happens in a lot of SaaS is year one, you've got a minimally viable product with a handful of features, right? Year two, there's more features, simple software. Year three, the product team adds more features. It's still simple software. But what happens with most SaaS products over time? Product leaders, in order to justify their job, add more features to generate additional benefit and value for the end customer. Like, that's the big thing in SaaS, right? You continually are adding more and more and more and more and more features on a year-by-year basis. And so what happens is you do that is in years 4 and 5 and 6, you go from simple software to suddenly the software becomes more and more complex. And as the software transitions from simple to complex with additional modules, their growing complexity, you can then suddenly wrap services around that not so simple software because of the additional complexity of the software itself. And so sometimes when you've got depending on the stage of the SaaS company that you're with, an earlier stage SaaS company, it's really hard to launch a reseller program because there's low complexity software. Fast forward 2 or 3 years into the software development of that company, and now suddenly it's easy to launch a reseller program because there's a lot more complexity. It takes a lot more time to set up. There's additional options. There's maybe some verticalization that happens in the product. So that's how I've looked at whether reseller referral is the right program. Alex has got a great comment. He said about how he built a program so quickly. He said he just acted like he was recruiting and training VPs of sales with each new agency partner. Made them feel special, gave them all the training and support they could handle, and set them up with the first couple of clients from their inbound team. So partner with your CRO, see if you can take a couple, or CMO, take a couple of inbound leads, let the partners take a crack at them. Good way to get them up to speed on how to present. And that's a good call out too. So that's what I've got for you. You know, referral versus resell, just some things that you should think about based on some experience that I've had. Don't make my mistakes, learn from them, and then you'll be able to do better than I did. So with that, if anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. We've got just a handful of minutes left.
Yeah, great job, man. Right on time. Anybody have any questions for Brian while we have him?
Hey, Brian, I got a question. So we're talking about partners where you're building a direct relationship with the partner, but a lot of the cases, there's more of a shadow channel that emerges first. Most partners, most agencies actually never want to talk to the vendor because you waste their time. I mean, they may love you, but all vendors waste partners' times, right? That's what they all feel. And you'll find that your resellers, so to speak, there's many of them actually out there who never want to be part of a partner program, don't need all that set up. And even around reply, which was in the chat, there are way more sales consultants who just bring it into projects without even bothering to be part of getting all that training. So have you ever successfully converted people from the shadow channel into a program, and are their needs different in your experience?
Yeah, the needs are different. They're, to your point, a lot of the shadow channel doesn't want to have to go through all the hoops that are involved in terms of like the full learning how to, learning the sales process and the pitch deck and the demos and all that other stuff. That to the shadow channel, that's all unnecessary overhead, right? And so what we did at Infusionsoft/Keep is we utilized our customer success team. And during QBRs, we'd ask customers, hey, do you have any agencies or anybody that's helped you with this before? We just asked that as a question. We started gathering that information. We flagged accounts. And then we'd reach out to those agencies and we'd say, hey, what can we do that would make this interesting for you? Right. And what additional value could we provide? And a lot of it was just like updates, like, hey, just keep us updated on the latest product stuff. And so we would turn them into referral partners where there's low overhead. We'd kick them back a couple of points in terms of rev share, which really wasn't material for them. But what was more valuable is we would invite them on a quarterly basis to calls with like our chief product officer. We would have roadmap calls and say, hey, here's what we have coming out in the next 2 or 3 months. These are some of the things that you should be aware of that you can start talking to your customers about. And you've got early access, and that was really valuable for them. That kind of made the transition over to where we could at least track the input that they were having across the organization. Cool.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions? I'll get you out of here. I'm all good. That was awesome, man. That was really good.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I learned a lot. Hopefully everyone learned some things. Everybody's in different stages, have different products, but I think the core principles are what matter. So that's what this was all about. Brian, love to have you back, talk more deeply about any of these topics. We could go probably session to session with each one of those slides, but would love to have you back, man. Thanks again.